Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair on the U.S. Liberty, watching the stars drift by through the main view screen. The ship was on routine patrol near the Andromeda Gate, one of the major trading routes between human space and the rest of the galaxy. It was supposed to be a boring mission, the kind that made junior officers complain about wasting time. Jake had been in space for 20 years, and he knew that boring was often better than exciting. Exciting usually meant someone was shooting at you. "Captain, I'm picking up an encrypted transmission," said Lieutenant Lissa Barnes from her position at the communications console. She was young, maybe 25, with bright eyes that hadn't yet seen enough to make her cynical like the rest of the crew. "Source?" Jake asked, not really interested. They picked up dozens of transmissions every day from merchant ships, council vessels, and colonists calling home. "Long range, sir. It looks like it's coming from the council headquarters station at Galactic Center." Lisa frowned at her screen. "The encryption is really heavy, Captain. This isn't standard civilian traffic." That got Jake's attention. The Galactic Council didn't usually send encrypted messages this far out into human territory. "Can you break it?" "I think so, sir. Give me a few minutes." Jake watched as Lisa's fingers flew over her console. She was the best communications officer he'd ever worked with, able to crack codes that stumped computers twice her age. It was one of the reasons he'd requested her for his crew. The bridge was quiet except for the low hum of the ship's engines and the soft beeping of various systems. The U.S. Liberty wasn't the biggest ship in the human fleet, but it was fast and well-armed, just the kind of ship needed for patrol duty in the outer sectors. "Got it, Captain," Lisa said after 10 minutes of intense concentration. "Routing it to your personal screen now. And sir, you're going to want to read this." Jake looked down at his command chair's built-in display and felt his blood run cold. The message header read, "Classification Level 9. Council Eyes Only. Resolution 2847. Systematic removal of Species 7742 from galactic territory." Species 7742. The Council's designation for humanity. Jake's hands trembled slightly as he read through the document. It was a summary of a vote taken 3 months ago in the council chambers. The resolution had passed by an overwhelming margin, 847 votes in favor, only 3 against. The Altarian, Vegan, and Centauri representatives had been the only ones to vote no. The document outlined a detailed plan to isolate human colonies, cut off trade routes, and eventually relocate or eliminate the human population entirely. The reason given was humanity's aggressive expansion tendencies and unpredictable military innovations that posed a threat to galactic stability. Jake read the timeline with growing horror. Phase 1 had already begun. Trade embargoes disguised as routine commercial disputes. Phase 2 would involve cutting off hyperspace routes to human space. Phase 3 was listed simply as Final Solution Implementation. "Jesus," Jake whispered, using an old Earth curse that still carried weight among humans in space. "Sir?" Lisa looked concerned. "Is everything all right?" Jake quickly transferred the document to an encrypted data core and locked it with his personal codes. "Lisa, I need you to send an emergency burst transmission to Earth Command. Maximum encryption. Include this document." "Yes, sir. What about the patrol?" "Patrol's over," Jake said grimly. "Set course for Earth immediately. Maximum speed." "Should I log our reason for breaking patrol?" Jake thought for a moment. If the Council was monitoring human communications, they couldn't risk revealing what they'd discovered. Log it as mechanical issues requiring immediate return to port. As the U.S. Liberty changed course toward Earth, Jake stared out at the stars and wondered how many of them belonged to species that wanted humanity dead. The peaceful galaxy they'd joined 50 years ago had been a lie. Behind closed doors, the Council had been planning their extinction. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated how far humans would go to survive. Jake smiled grimly as he watched the stars streak past. The Council was about to learn what happened when you threatened the human race. They were about to meet humanity's most dangerous quality, the refusal to go quietly into the night. Admiral Patricia Cole stood at the head of the long table in the Earth Defense Command Center, staring at the holographic display showing the intercepted council document. Around the table sat the most powerful people in human space: military commanders, colony representatives, and government officials. The mood in the room was darker than a black hole. "So they want us gone," said President Richard Hayes, his voice calm but his hands clenched into fists. "Not just pushed around or contained. Completely erased." "That's what the document says, sir," Admiral Cole replied. She was a tall woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. 3 months ago, while we were negotiating trade agreements and exchange programs, they were voting on how to eliminate us. Dr. Helen Murphy, the head of Xenobiological Studies, cleared her throat. "Admiral, this might explain some things I've been investigating. Over the past year, several alien corporations have been very interested in detailed maps of our colony worlds. They called them trade surveys, but the questions were strange. They wanted to know about our defense systems, population centers, food production facilities." "You think they were gathering intelligence?" asked Colonel Frank Davis from the Mars Defense Corps. "Unsure of it now," Dr. Murphy said, pulling up her own data on the display. "Look at these contracts. Every single one came from council member species. They were planning this long before they took the vote." Ambassador Carl Phillips, the human representative to the Galactic Council, looked sick. "I sat in meetings with these people, smiled, shook hands, discussed cultural exchanges, and they were planning genocide." "Not all of them," Admiral Cole reminded him. 3 species voted against it. "That's something we can work with." 3 out of 850, President Hayes said bitterly. "Some odds." The Admiral touched a control, and the display changed to show reports from human colonies across the galaxy. Red markers indicated problems: trade disputes, technical failures, increased security patrols by Council forces. "It's already started," she said. "New Atlanta reports that Zephyrian traders have stopped delivering medical supplies. They claim it's a shipping problem. New Texas says their hyperspace communication array has been experiencing mysterious malfunctions. And 3 Outer Rim colonies have reported increased Council peacekeeping patrols in their space." Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell from Fleet Intelligence spoke up. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual military buildup along the borders of Council territory. Ships moving into position that could cut off our major trade routes within weeks." President Hayes stood up, his decision made. "I'm authorizing immediate mobilization of the colonial fleet. All reserves called to active duty." Admiral Cole, "How long before we can have a defensive force in position?" 48 hours for the inner colony, sir. A week for the Outer Rim." "But, Mr. President, we're talking about fighting the entire galaxy. Our fleet is good, but we're outnumbered 1,000 to 1. "Then we'd better make sure we're not fighting alone," the President said. He turned to Ambassador Phillips. "Carl, I want you to make contact with every non-Council species you can find, and reach out to those 3 species that voted against this madness. If they had the courage to stand up in the Council chambers, maybe they'll have the courage to help us fight." Dr. Murphy raised her hand. "Sir, there's something else. I've been working with some alien scientists on research projects. Good people who respect human achievements. Not everyone in the galaxy believes we're a threat. Contact them," Admiral Cole ordered. "We need all the allies we can get." President Hayes looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. Fear was there, yes, but so was determination. Humans had fought their way off one world and across the galaxy. They hadn't done it by giving up when things looked impossible. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we're facing extinction. But we're human beings. We've survived ice ages, wars, plagues, and the vacuum of space itself. We didn't come this far to be snuffed out by a committee vote." The room erupted in determined voices as orders were given and plans were made. In orbit above Earth, ships began powering up their engines. Across human space, colonies received coded messages to prepare for the worst. The galaxy wanted humanity gone. But humanity had other plans. The fight for survival was about to begin. Zethrak pulled his hood lower over his scaled face as he walked through the crowded marketplace on Rigel Station. The Altarian smuggler had been moving cargo through back channels for 30 years. But this was different. This time he wasn't smuggling goods or weapons. He was smuggling people. Human people. Behind him, a family of 5 humans followed nervously, trying to look like normal travelers. The father carried a small bag while the mother held their youngest child, a girl maybe 6 years old. 2 teenage boys flanked them, their eyes constantly scanning for danger. "Stay close," Zethrak whispered in his broken human English. "Ship waiting at Dock 7. Council patrol just passed. We have maybe 20 minutes." The father, a farmer from the colony of New Haven, nodded grimly. "Thank you for this. We heard what happened to the Williams family on Sarah's Minor." Zethrak's expression darkened. The Williams family had refused to leave their farm when council forces arrived. They'd been listed as relocated for their own safety, but refugees who escaped told a different story. The colony was empty now. Houses burned, fields poisoned. At Dock 7, Verona waited by her small cargo ship. The vegan diplomat was tall and graceful, with the characteristic bronze skin and large eyes of her species. Unlike Zethrak, she had everything to lose by helping humans. Her diplomatic immunity was the only thing protecting her from council arrest warrants. "Quickly," she said softly. "I've prepared sleeping quarters in the cargo hold. My ship has diplomatic clearance to leave the station without inspection." As the human family boarded, Zethrak noticed movement across the docking bay. Council security, 3 of them, walking with purpose toward their section. "We have company," he muttered to Verani. She followed his gaze, and her face went pale. "Get them aboard. Now." On the other side of the galaxy, Colonel Ben Rodriguez crouched in the brush outside the human settlement of New Sacramento. Through his binoculars, he watched Council peacekeeping forces setting up a perimeter around the town. Their intentions were clear from the heavy assault vehicles and the detention transports waiting behind the main force. "Count 30 hostile vehicles," whispered Sergeant Lisa Parker through his comm unit. She was positioned on a hill overlooking the east side of town. "Looks like they're planning a full sweep." Ben's team had been moving from colony to colony for 2 weeks, staying one step ahead of the council forces. They'd managed to evacuate 12 settlements so far, but they were running out of time. The council was moving faster than expected. "Any sign of the civilians?" he asked. "Negative, sir. Town looks empty. Either they got out on their own, or—" Ben finished the thought silently. "Or they were already gone, like the others." He'd seen the detention camps, hidden in remote systems. The council called them relocation centers, but the humans inside were working as forced labor, mining rare minerals or building military equipment. His comm crackled with an incoming message. "Colonel Rodriguez, this is Commander Steve Walsh on the U.S. Carolina. We're in position above the colony. Council fleet is demanding we stand down and allow their operation to proceed." Ben smiled grimly. The Carolina was one of the new fast attack ships, designed specifically for fighting larger vessels. If anyone could hold off a council fleet, it was Steve Walsh. "Tell the council they can go to hell, Commander," Ben replied. "We're not leaving without our people." Above the planet, space lit up with weapons fire as the U.S. Carolina engaged 3 council warships. The human ship was smaller but faster, dancing between the larger vessels and hitting them with precise strikes. On the ground, Ben's team moved into action. They'd found the humans hidden in underground shelters beneath the town. Families, elderly people, children, over 300 civilians who'd refused to abandon their homes. "Transport ships incoming," reported Corporal Mike Johnson from the landing zone they'd secured outside town. "Looks like the cavalry's arriving." As Council ground forces rushed toward the sound of gunfire, human ships dropped from the sky. It was a race against time. Load the civilians and get out before being overwhelmed. Ben's radio crackled again. Walsh's voice was strained but determined. "Colonel, we've taken some hits, but we're still flying. Council ships are backing off. Apparently, they didn't expect us to fight back this hard." The evacuation proceeded quickly. Families grabbed what they could carry and ran for the ships. Children cried. Parents looked back at homes they'd built with their own hands, but they all knew the truth. Better to leave everything behind than to disappear forever. As the last transport lifted off, Ben took one final look at New Sacramento. It had been a beautiful little town, with tree-lined streets and well-kept gardens. Now it would join the growing list of empty human settlements. But the people were safe. That's what mattered. The Council could take their homes, but they couldn't take their humanity. Not without a fight. The news broke at exactly 800 Standard Galactic Time across every major news network. Krintar, the Betelgeuse correspondent, stood in front of his camera with what humans would recognize as barely controlled anger on his insectoid features. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began, his translator converting his clicking speech into dozens of languages simultaneously. "What you are about to hear will shock you to your core. 3 months ago, your elected representatives voted in secret to eliminate an entire species from our galaxy." The leaked recording began to play. Council Speaker Vorthak's voice filled living rooms across 1,000 worlds. "The humans reproduce too quickly and advance too rapidly. Their military technology already rivals our own. In 50 years, they could threaten Council authority. We must act now while we still can." On the industrial world of Rigel Prime, Cortheni workers stopped their machines to listen. In the crystal cities of Betelgeuse 7, citizens gathered around public screens. Even in the deepest mining colonies, people paused their work to hear the truth. The recording continued with other voices joining in. "Complete removal is the only option," said the Zephyrian representative. "We tried containment with the Taurillians. Look how that worked out." "The Taurillians fought back," responded the Council Speaker. "The humans will too, but we're prepared this time. Phase 1 isolation has already begun." Krintar paused the recording and looked directly into the camera. "The Taurillians, a peaceful trading species that was relocated for galactic safety 200 years ago. We were told they chose to leave, but this recording suggests something far darker." On the pleasure world of Riza, tourists from dozens of species watched in horror as the broadcast continued. A Rigelian family sat in stunned silence as their teenage daughter asked, "Mom, what happened to the Taurillians?" The mother had no answer. None of them did. In the great libraries of Centauri Prime, scholars rushed to find any records of the Taurillian people. What they found was almost nothing. Official records said they had requested relocation to explore distant galaxies, but there were no departure records, no communication logs, no traces of where they had gone. The leaked recording played on. "Public opinion will be a problem," admitted the Andromedan delegate. "Many species have positive relationships with humans. Then we don't tell them." Council Speaker Vorthak replied simply. "Humans disappear gradually. Mechanical failures, navigation errors, pirate attacks. The galaxy will forget them within a generation." Riots began within hours. On Betelgeuse 7, 10,000 citizens surrounded the Council embassy, demanding answers. Security forces refused to disperse them when they realized half the rioters were their own families. On Rigel Prime, 3 Council recruiters who had been signing up young people for defense service were chased off the planet by angry mobs. The recruitment offices were burned to the ground. But the most significant response came from an unexpected source. Princess Leirali of the Proximan royal family, only 25 years old and fresh out of the diplomatic academy, called an emergency session of young representatives from 40 different species. "We are the future of this galaxy," she declared to the gathered youth, "and I will not inherit a universe built on genocide." The recording had revealed more than just the vote against humanity. As news organizations dug deeper, they found references to other removals. The peaceful Kolethi, eliminated 3 generations ago for aggressive terraforming. The Tellurian Collective, wiped out for dangerous technological development. On the ocean world of Aquatica, the dolphin-like cetaceans held emergency gatherings in their deep city councils. Their ancestral memory was long, and elder speakers began recalling stories of other species that had simply vanished from galactic records. How many? Clicked speaker waveband to her assembled people. How many innocent species have they erased? The answer came from the archives of memory on Vegan Prime. Veroni's own grandmother, the keeper of historical records, published a list that made the galaxy weep. 43 species listed as relocated or voluntary departure over the past 1,000 years. 43 civilizations, billions of lives, all erased by council votes taken in secret chambers. The Free Worlds Alliance, a group of independent systems that had never joined the council, issued a joint statement. We hereby recognize the human right to exist and defend themselves. Any species fleeing council persecution is welcome in our space. On Earth, President Hayes received a message that brought tears to his eyes. It was from Princess Lyrale herself. Your people saved mine from plague 20 years ago. Now we return the favor. The young people of the galaxy stand with humanity. The galaxy was waking up to a terrible truth. The council they had trusted for millennia was built on the bones of murdered civilizations. And now, for the first time in history, one of their intended victims was fighting back. The secret was out. The galaxy wanted answers, and humanity intended to give them some, whether the council liked it or not. Major Kyle Johnson moved silently through the ventilation shaft of Council Station Alpha 7. Behind him, 5 of the best human special forces soldiers in the galaxy followed like shadows. Their mission was simple in concept, difficult in execution. Disable the station's primary communication array and escape before anyone knew they were there. Target room is 50 meters ahead, whispered Sergeant Amy Parker through the comlink. She was monitoring their approach from the stolen council maintenance ship they used to reach the station. No guards in the corridor, but that's about to change. Kyle held up his fist, signaling the team to stop. Through the grating below, he could see 2 council security officers walking their patrol route. Tall, blue-skinned centurions with energy weapons that could burn through human body armor like paper. He waited for them to pass, then carefully removed the grating and dropped into the corridor. His team followed, their movements precise and silent. Months of raids on council installations had taught them exactly how the enemy operated. The communications center was protected by electronic locks that would have stumped most intruders. But Corporal David Lee, the team's tech specialist, had been studying council systems for years. His fingers danced over his portable device as he bypassed the security. "We're in," David whispered as the door slid open. The room beyond was filled with massive computer servers, humming with the data of 1,000 worlds. This station processed communication traffic for the entire sector, including orders to council fleets hunting human ships. While his team set up security, Kyle planted carefully designed viruses throughout the system. Not just random destruction, but precise surgical strikes that would cripple council coordination for weeks. 300 light-years away, Captain Frank Miller stood on the bridge of the U.S. Freedom, watching the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Around his ship, 12 other human vessels maintained formation as they approached their target, the Council's primary data center at Nexus Prime. "All ships report ready, Captain," said Commander Janet Ross, his first officer. "Stealth systems are holding. They still can't see us." Frank nodded. The new cloaking technology developed by Dr. Kevin Clark had changed everything. Human ships could now strike anywhere in Council space without warning. It was the only advantage they had against overwhelming numbers. "Begin the attack," Frank ordered. Space erupted with weapons fire as the human fleet decloaked simultaneously. Council ships scrambling to respond found themselves outgunned and outmaneuvered. The humans had learned to fight dirty, hitting fast and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. Boarding teams away, reported Lieutenant Commander Nancy White from the Freedom's hangar bay. They'll have 20 minutes before Council reinforcements arrive. Inside the data center, human Marines fought through corridors while technical specialists raced to download everything they could find. Terabytes of classified Council documents, records of secret votes, communications between member species, and most importantly, evidence of other species that had been eliminated. Back on Council Station Alpha 7, Kyle's team was preparing to leave when alarms began screaming throughout the facility. Their sabotage had been discovered. "Kyle, you've got 50 guards heading your way," Amy warned from orbit, plus 2 squads of heavy assault troops. "Time to go." The team fought their way through corridors, filled with smoke and flashing emergency lights. Council security forces had sealed the hangar bays, forcing the humans to take an alternate route through the station's industrial section. "There," pointed Corporal Lee as they reached a maintenance airlock. "Emergency escape pod. It'll get us to Amy's ship." As they climbed into the cramped pod, Kyle could hear heavy footsteps approaching. Council forces were closing in fast. The pod launched just as energy bolts began hitting the airlock behind them. "This is getting too easy," Kyle muttered as Amy's ship picked them up. "They're not learning fast enough." He was right. For all their technology and numbers, the Council had never faced an enemy like humanity. They were used to fighting formal battles against species that followed the same ancient rules of war. Humans didn't follow those rules. They struck from shadows, disappeared into space, and hit again when no one expected it. They had learned to turn their smaller numbers into an advantage, using speed and surprise instead of raw power. On Nexus Prime, the human raid was already over. Council ships arrived to find their data center burning and human vessels vanishing into hyperspace. Inside the smoking ruins, investigators would find empty servers and destroyed security systems. But they wouldn't find the millions of classified documents now in human hands. Documents that would expose every dark secret the Council had hidden for 1,000 years. Dr. Kevin Clark smiled as his team of scientists put the finishing touches on their latest creation. The new armor system would make human soldiers nearly invisible to Council sensors while tripling their combat effectiveness. The Council wanted a war. They were getting one. But it wouldn't be the kind of war they expected. It would be humanity's war, fought on humanity's terms. And humanity was just getting started. The massive draconian warship Starfire descended through Earth's atmosphere like a moving mountain, on the observation deck of the human space station Mercury 1. Ambassador Carl Phillips watched in amazement as the ship settled onto the landing pad that had been hastily expanded to accommodate its enormous size. "I never thought I'd see the day," he murmured to Admiral Patricia Cole, who stood beside him. "Dragons coming to Earth to help humanity." The Draconian Empire had been the Council's biggest rival for centuries. Unlike the Council's bureaucratic approach, the Draconians believed in strength, honor, and direct action. Their ambassador, a massive being called Pyraxis the Bold, walked down the ship's ramp with steps that shook the ground. "Humans," Pyraxis spoke through his translator device, his voice like distant thunder. "You fight well for such small beings. The Council fears you, and anything the Council fears has our respect." Admiral Cole stepped forward. The top of her head barely reached the dragon's chest, but she showed no fear. "Ambassador Pyraxis, we're honored by your presence, but we have to ask, why now? Why are you helping us?" Pyraxis lowered his great head to look directly at her. His eyes, large as dinner plates, held ancient wisdom. "Because the Council has forgotten what strength truly means. They hide in shadows, striking at the weak when they think no one is watching. This is not the behavior of warriors. This is the behavior of cowards." Meanwhile, halfway across the galaxy, Dr. Amy Patterson worked frantically in her hidden laboratory on the planet Vega Prime. She wasn't human. She was vegan, one of the species that had voted against the resolution to eliminate humanity. For months, she'd been secretly sharing her research with human scientists, helping them develop new technologies. "The quantum resonance patterns are perfect," she said to Dr. Kevin Clark through their encrypted communication link. Your ships will be completely invisible to Council sensors now. Not just hard to detect, completely invisible. Kevin smiled on the other end of the transmission. Amy, you're a genius. With this technology, we can hit their installations without them ever seeing us coming. Just promise me one thing, Amy said quietly. When this is over, when you've won, remember that not all Council species supported this. Some of us fought for you from the beginning. The evidence was mounting everywhere. On Earth, human analysts worked day and night sorting through the massive data dump from the Council files. What they found was horrifying. Jesus Christ, whispered Dr. Helen Murphy as she reviewed another file. She called Admiral Cole immediately. Admiral, you need to see this. We found records of what happened to some of the relocated species. When Cole arrived at the analysis center, Dr. Murphy showed her images that made the tough military officer turn pale. The Taurillians weren't relocated. They were moved to work camps. Forced labor mining rare elements on dead worlds. Most of them died within 10 years. And the others? Medical experiments. The Council has been using eliminated species as test subjects for biological weapons, genetic modification, even trying to transfer consciousness into machines. They've been building their technology on the suffering of innocent people for centuries. Admiral Cole's jaw tightened. How many survivors? That's the thing, Admiral. We think there might be survivors from several species. Hidden camps, underground resistance groups, people who escaped. If we could find them. Across the galaxy, rescue operations began. Human special forces teams, working with draconian ships and sympathetic aliens, started hitting the hidden prison camps. What they found confirmed their worst fears. Admiral Tony Garcia led the first major rescue operation, liberating a camp on the dead moon of Kepler 442 bits. Inside the underground complex, they found 300 survivors from 4 different species that were supposed to be extinct. My God, Garcia breathed as he saw the conditions. Beings who had once lived on beautiful worlds were now confined in tiny cells, their only purpose to serve the Council's experiments. An elderly Taurillian woman approached him on unsteady legs. Through a translator, she spoke. You're human. We heard your people were fighting the Council. We hoped, but we didn't dare believe rescue would come. Garcia knelt beside her, his eyes wet. Ma'am, you're safe now. All of you. We're going to get you out of here and take you somewhere safe. The rescued beings were taken to secret facilities in Free Worlds Alliance space, where they could recover and tell their stories. Each testimony added to the growing evidence of Council crimes. Back on Earth, the alliance between humans and their new friends grew stronger daily. The Draconian Empire provided heavy warships and experienced warriors. The Free Worlds Alliance offered safe haven and resources. Even individual Council species began secretly helping, providing intelligence and supplies. Princess Lirali of Proxima arrived on Earth with a delegation of young leaders from 30 different species. We are forming a new alliance, she announced. One based on equality and respect, not fear and oppression. As rescue ships returned with more survivors, humanity realized they weren't just fighting for their own survival anymore. They were fighting to save every species the Council had wronged, to build a galaxy where no one would ever again vote in secret to eliminate another people. The Council had made one crucial mistake. They thought fear would keep everyone in line. Instead, they had united their enemies into something powerful: hope. The great Council chambers had never seen anything like it. Thousands of protesters from dozens of different species filled the vast plaza outside the ancient building. Their chants in 100 languages all carried the same message: justice for the eliminated species. Inside the chambers, Council Speaker Vorthak tried to maintain order as representatives from member species shouted at each other across the floor. Half the seats were empty. Those species had already withdrawn from the Council in protest. Order! Order! Vorthak's voice boomed through the speakers, but no one was listening anymore. The Rigelian delegate stood up, his usually calm demeanor replaced by raw anger. How can there be order when we just learned our government has been committing genocide for 1,000 years? On the floor of the chambers, holographic displays showed image after image of the rescued prisoners. Tyrellians, Calathi, beings from species everyone thought were extinct, all testifying about the camps, the experiments, the horror they'd endured. Outside, Captain Jake Morrison stood with Admiral Patricia Cole on the command deck of the U.S. Independence, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. Around them, the combined human-allied fleet stretched across space, hundreds of ships from dozens of species, all united in purpose. They're requesting permission to land, reported Lieutenant Lisa Barnes, now promoted to commander and serving as the fleet's communications chief. Council security is standing down. The dock workers are from species that voted against the resolution. They're welcoming us. Admiral Cole smiled grimly. Send the message. Admiral Patricia Cole, commanding the Liberation Fleet of the Galactic Alliance, requesting permission to dock for the purpose of delivering evidence of war crimes. The response came immediately. Permission granted, Admiral. Bay 12 is cleared for your arrival. As the human shuttle descended into the Council Station's main docking bay, crowds of alien workers cheered and waved. These were the people who kept the station running. Beings from working-class species who had no say in Council politics, but had always known something was wrong. Admiral Cole stepped out of the shuttle wearing her full-dress uniform, followed by a team of human and alien lawyers carrying cases full of evidence. But she wasn't alone. Behind her walked former prisoners from the liberated camps, survivors of species the Council had tried to erase. The ancient Tyrellian woman Garcia had rescued walked slowly but with dignity. Beside her, a young Calathi engineer who had escaped a work camp 20 years ago. Representatives of all 43 eliminated species, proof that the Council's genocide had failed. Inside the chambers, the noise stopped when they entered. Admiral Cole walked down the center aisle, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. She stopped directly in front of Speaker Vorthak's elevated platform. Council Speaker, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I am Admiral Patricia Cole of the United Human Colonial Fleet. I come before you with evidence of crimes against sentient life committed by this body over the past millennium. Vorthak's face had gone pale. Admiral, this chamber does not recognize. This chamber will recognize these, Cole interrupted, holding up a data crystal. Complete records of every secret vote, every elimination order, every cover-up, testimony from survivors of your camps, visual evidence of the horrors inflicted on innocent beings. She gestured, and the chamber's main display activated. Images filled the air, the work camps, the experiment labs, documents showing the systematic elimination of species after species. But the most powerful moment came when the survivors themselves began to speak. The old Tyrellian woman stepped forward, her voice shaking but determined. My name is Talera. My people were peaceful traders. We never threatened anyone. When Council ships came, they told us we were being relocated for our own safety. They lied. They worked us to death mining poison crystals on a dead world. Of my family of 12, only I remain. One by one, survivors testified. The chamber was completely silent except for their voices. Some Council representatives wept openly. Others stared in shock at the evidence of what their government had done. Admiral Cole stepped forward again. The human species demands justice, not just for ourselves, but for every species this Council has wronged. We demand the immediate dissolution of this corrupt body and the establishment of a new galactic government based on equality and representation for all. Speaker Vorthak tried to respond, but his words were drowned out by the roar of approval from the chamber's galleries. Representatives from dozens of species were standing, applauding, demanding change. Furthermore, Cole continued, any member species that continues to support this criminal organization will be considered an enemy of free sentient life everywhere. You have brought this on yourselves through your own actions. The chamber erupted in chaos. Some delegates stormed out in protest. Others rushed to denounce the council leadership. On the viewing screens, reports came in of riots on council homeworlds, of military units refusing orders, of entire star systems declaring independence. As Cole and her team prepared to leave, she delivered one final message. This council rose to power through fear and murder. It will fall because courage and truth are stronger than tyranny. The galaxy will not forget what was done here, and it will not forgive. Walking back to their shuttle through crowds of cheering workers, Admiral Cole felt the weight of history. This was the moment everything changed. The old galaxy was dying, and a new one was about to be born. Behind them, the council chambers burned as angry crowds stormed the building. 1,000 years of oppression was finally coming to an end. 2 years after the truth had shattered the galaxy, Admiral Patricia Cole stood in the gleaming new chambers of the Galactic Federation on the neutral world of Harmony Station. Instead of the cold, imposing architecture of the old council chambers, this space was designed with flowing curves and natural light, welcoming all species equally. The 41st proposal of the day, announced the session speaker, a young vegan diplomat named Karen, comes from the human colonial delegation regarding the expansion of the refugee resettlement program. Cole smiled as she watched Ambassador Carl Phillips stand to address the chamber. The old diplomat had been one of the key architects of the new federation, helping to write the charter that guaranteed every species the right to exist and thrive. Honored representatives, Phillips began, I'm pleased to report that all 43 previously eliminated species now have functioning colonies and full representation in this body. The Tyrillians have established a thriving agricultural world, the Colithi have built 3 new engineering centers, and the Deltarians are once again exploring the far reaches of space. In the gallery above, Jake Morrison watched with quiet satisfaction. The former reconnaissance captain was now Admiral Morrison, commanding the Federation Exploration Service. His ship, the U.S. Unity, was preparing for the first joint human-alien mission to explore beyond the galactic rim. Next week, Phillips continued, we'll welcome the first class of the Interspecies Academy, where young beings from all our worlds will learn together, ensuring that the mistakes of the past are never repeated. The chamber erupted in applause. In the medical section, Dr. Helen Murphy worked with alien scientists from dozens of species, sharing knowledge that had been hoarded by the old council for generations. Diseases that had plagued entire worlds for centuries were being cured through cooperation. The transformation has been remarkable, Dr. Amy Patterson said during a break in the session. The vegan scientist had become the Federation's head of technological development. Humans brought something we'd forgotten. The idea that differences make us stronger, not weaker. Outside the station, space traffic bustled with ships of every shape and size. Human vessels worked alongside draconian warships, Altarian traders, and even some former council species that had embraced the new order. The Free Worlds Alliance had become the backbone of the new Federation, providing resources and expertise. In a small ceremony taking place in the station's memorial hall, families gathered to remember those who didn't live to see this day. Lisa Barnes, now a commander in the Federation fleet, laid flowers at a memorial wall bearing the names of every being who had died in the old council's camps. They didn't die for nothing, she whispered to the names carved in crystal. We made sure of that. The real celebration, however, was happening on worlds across the galaxy. On New Terra, human children played alongside young Regelians and Proximan cubs in schools where no one species was considered superior. On Dracomis Prime, human engineers worked with Dragon Masters to build ships that combined the best of both technologies. But perhaps the most significant moment came when Princess Lairali, now president of the Federation Youth Council, announced the galaxy's newest achievement. Today, we launched the first mixed-species crew to establish a colony in the Andromeda Galaxy. Humans, Draconians, Vegans, and Altarians working together to explore new worlds. The old council leaders faced justice in Federation courts. Speaker Vorthak and his inner circle were sentenced to life imprisonment for genocide and crimes against sentient life. They would spend their remaining years in comfortable but secure facilities, forced to watch as their vision of galactic order crumbled into something far better. The irony, Admiral Cole mused to President Richard Hayes during a private dinner, is that they were right about one thing. Humans did change the galaxy, just not the way they expected. Hayes chuckled, raising his glass. To changing the galaxy, one friendship at a time. As night fell on Harmony Station, the stars shone brighter than they had in 1,000 years. Jake Morrison's exploration fleet prepared to depart on their historic mission, carrying representatives of 12 species into the unknown. U.S. Unity to Federation Command, came his voice over the comm. All ships report ready for departure, beginning countdown to jump. Admiral Cole watched from the observation deck as the ships vanished into hyperspace, carrying the hopes and dreams of countless worlds. The galaxy was no longer divided between the powerful and the powerless, the chosen and the eliminated. It was simply home to billions of beings, different in form, but united in purpose, to explore, to learn, and to ensure that never again would anyone vote in secret to erase another species from existence. The secret was out, the votes had been counted, and the galaxy had chosen its answer. It chose life, diversity, and hope over fear and hatred. And in the vast expanse of space, that answer echoed among the stars, a promise that would guide civilizations for generations to come.